Lena Marlowe vanished without a sound. Caleb Rourke buried the secret beneath her own pasture. 9 years later, an oil drill pierced the earth and unearthed a murder Red Hollow thought it had buried forever. Asterisk asterisk. After the trial, Red Hollow began to heal. Lena Marlowe's remains were laid to rest in the town cemetery, beside her parents, in a ceremony attended by hundreds. Her grave was marked with a simple stone carved with her name, a cow-shaped charm embedded in the base, a quiet tribute to the life she had lived and the work she had loved. Her family, though still grieving, found comfort in knowing the truth had finally come to light. Lena's niece, Emily, inherited the remaining portion of the farm. Instead of restarting the cattle business, she transformed the land into a memorial garden and animal sanctuary. The southern pasture, where Lena had last walked, was replanted with native wildflowers. A wooden sign at the entrance read, "Marlowe Sanctuary, in memory of Lena." Visitors came from nearby towns to walk the trails, read about Lena's story, and reflect on the resilience of a woman who had once been the heart of Red Hollow. Blackridge Energy, the company that had discovered Lena's remains, paused all drilling operations on the land. In a gesture of goodwill, they donated a portion of their profits to fund missing persons investigations in rural communities. Their involvement had been accidental, but the impact was lasting. Lena's story spread beyond Red Hollow. Documentaries, articles, and podcasts explored the case, highlighting the importance of thorough searches and the dangers of unresolved disputes. Her disappearance had once been a quiet tragedy. Now, it was a symbol of perseverance, for families who never stopped searching and for communities that refused to forget. The field where Lena vanished no longer felt haunted. It bloomed with color and life, a place of remembrance and peace. And though the mystery had ended, her legacy continued, rooted in the soil, growing stronger with each passing season. The trial of Caleb Rourke gripped Red Hollow like a storm. It was held in the county courthouse, drawing crowds of locals and reporters who had followed Lena Marlowe's case for years. The prosecution laid out a clear timeline. Caleb had confronted Lena in the field during her morning routine, struck her with a shovel, and buried her body in a remote patch of land he later sold to avoid suspicion. The motive was rooted in a long-standing feud over land and water rights. Caleb had wanted control of Lena's pasture, and she had refused. Evidence was strong. The bloodstained shovel hidden in his barn. The video fragment showing a shadow behind Lena moments before the footage cut off. The land sale that conveniently removed the burial site from his ownership. Witnesses testified about Caleb's temper and his obsession with expanding his farm. The anonymous tip about the burning in the field added weight to the theory that he had tried to destroy evidence. Caleb's defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial. They claimed the shovel could have been used by anyone, that the video was too unclear to identify a suspect, and that Caleb had sold the land for financial reasons unrelated to Lena's disappearance. But the jury wasn't convinced. After 3 weeks of testimony and 2 days of deliberation, Caleb was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read. Lena's family wept quietly, finally given the closure they had waited 9 years for. Red Hollow was changed. The trial had reopened old wounds and exposed buried tensions. But it had also delivered justice. Lena's story, once a mystery, had become a warning. A reminder that even in quiet towns, darkness can hide in plain sight. The investigation quickly turned toward those who had known Lena well, especially anyone with access to the land where her body was found. One name surfaced again and again, Caleb Rourke. He had been Lena's neighbor for over a decade, a fellow farmer with a reputation for being stubborn and territorial. Years before Lena vanished, Caleb and Lena had clashed over a property boundary. The dispute had grown bitter, involving lawyers and town meetings. Caleb wanted access to a stream that ran through Lena's pasture, claiming it was essential for his cattle. Lena refused. After Lena disappeared, Caleb had sold a portion of his land, the very section where her remains were later discovered. At the time, the sale seemed routine, but now it looked suspicious. Investigators dug deeper. A former farmhand came forward, anonymously, claiming Caleb had been seen burning something in the field days after Lena vanished. The tip led police to search Caleb's old barn, which had been left untouched since he retired and moved out of town. Behind a false wall in the barn, they found a shovel. It was stained with what appeared to be dried blood. Forensic testing confirmed it matched Lena's DNA. The shovel had been cleaned, but not well enough. It had likely been used to dig the grave. Caleb was brought in for questioning. He denied everything, insisting he had nothing to do with Lena's death. But the evidence was mounting. The land sale, the blood-stained shovel, the history of conflict, it all pointed in one direction. The town of Red Hollow, once quiet and trusting, began to turn. People remembered Caleb's temper, his obsession with land, and how he had always spoken of Lena with resentment. The pieces were falling into place, and the truth was beginning to surface. The forensic team worked quickly, determined to uncover every detail hidden in the soil. Lena Marlowe's bones showed clear signs of trauma. Her skull had been fractured by a single, forceful blow, likely from a blunt object. There were no defensive wounds, suggesting she had been caught off guard. The flannel shirt she was found in matched the one she wore the morning she vanished. Her necklace, a silver charm shaped like a cow, was still intact, but it was the broken phone that drew the most attention. Though damaged by time and moisture, the phone's memory card had survived. Technicians recovered fragments of a video, corrupted, grainy, but partially viewable. It showed Lena walking through the field, cows grazing in the distance. The camera shook slightly, as if she were filming while walking. Then, just before the footage cut off, a shadow moved behind her. The image froze. The file ended. Investigators studied the terrain. The burial site was only 300 yards from where Lena's truck had been found. It was a patch of land that had been overlooked during the initial search, dense with brush and assumed to be inaccessible. But someone had known it well enough to dig a grave and hide a body without being seen. The discovery changed everything. Lena hadn't wandered off. She hadn't run away. She had been murdered and buried in a place no one thought to look. The oil company's drill had done what years of searching couldn't. It had pierced the silence. Detectives began re-examining old interviews, revisiting past suspects, and tracing land ownership records. The field, once forgotten, had become the key to unlocking a crime that had haunted Red Hollow for nearly a decade. And the shadow in the video hinted that someone had been watching Lena that morning, someone who never meant for her to be found. 9 years later, Red Hollow had changed. New families had moved in, old ones had left, and Lena Marlowe's disappearance had become a distant memory, an unsolved mystery that people rarely spoke about. Her farm had been sold off in pieces, the land divided among developers and neighboring farmers. One section, a neglected field near the woods, had remained untouched for years. Overgrown with weeds and wildflowers, it was considered useless for agriculture. That changed when Blackridge Energy arrived. The oil drilling company had leased the land for exploratory drilling, believing the area might hold untapped reserves. In the summer of 2025, workers began clearing the field. Bulldozers pushed aside brush, and surveyors marked the ground. On a humid afternoon in July, while digging a test shaft, the drill hit something unexpected. It wasn't oil. It wasn't rock. It was metal. The crew stopped immediately. What they uncovered was a rusted metal box, buried 6 feet underground. Inside were human remains, bones wrapped in a decaying flannel shirt, a silver necklace tangled in the fabric, and a shattered phone with a faded case. The sheriff was called. Forensics were rushed. Within days, the remains were confirmed to be Lena Marlowe's. The discovery sent shockwaves through Red Hollow. The woman who had vanished without a trace had been buried just a few hundred yards from where her truck was found. The field had been searched back in 2016, but only superficially. No one had thought to dig. No one had suspected that the answer had been hidden beneath the soil all along. The case was reopened. Lena's death was no longer a mystery. It was a homicide. And the quiet field that had stood untouched for nearly a decade was now the center of a crime scene, holding secrets that had waited patiently to be unearthed. As days turned into weeks, Red Hollow began to unravel. Lena Marlowe's disappearance wasn't just a mystery. It became an obsession. Everyone had a theory. Some believed she had staged her own vanishing, escaping a life of hard labor for something new. Others whispered about a secret lover, a hidden affair that had gone wrong. A few pointed fingers at her neighbors, especially those who had feuded with her over land boundaries and water rights. But none of it added up. Lena had no history of running away. Her bank accounts remained untouched. Her social media showed no signs of distress or unusual activity. She hadn't packed a bag, hadn't taken any money, and hadn't made any calls. Her phone records showed nothing out of the ordinary. Her last known location was still that foggy field, where her cows had wandered freely and her truck sat idle. The police followed every lead. They questioned friends, family, and nearby farmers. They searched barns, sheds, and abandoned buildings. They even brought in psychics and specialized trackers. But every trail went cold. No one had seen her. No one had heard anything. No one knew where she went. Her family refused to give up. They posted flyers, held vigils, and kept her story alive in local news. Her sister started a blog, documenting every detail of the case, hoping someone, somewhere, might remember something. But as months passed, interest faded. The search teams disbanded. The media moved on. Red Hollow returned to its quiet routines, but the unease lingered. Lena's empty farmhouse stood like a ghost on the edge of town. Her fields grew wild. Her cows were sold, and the gate where she vanished became a place people avoided, as if afraid the fog might take someone else. The silence around her disappearance was louder than any answer.